Happy New Year, dear friends. Happy first Wednesday of this new year. It's middle of the day in which the struggles are perhaps going on in the Congress. It's a day to affirm that Joe Biden was the next president. But it's also the traditional date for the Epiphany, January the 6th. So it's my hope that we can combine in this wonderful psalm, brief psalm, powerful psalm, Psalm 53, the blessings of God when we have total faith and confidence in God. So welcome to this time. Let's begin with a little bit of relaxing, centering, and giving our hearts to God as we prepare to listen, especially in the silence, in between the words of the coming psalm, in between the events of these days. It's the silence where God speaks. And so, let's relax for some moments. Just let the gentle music bring you to a place of quiet. Feel your breathing. With each inhale, you take in the Spirit of God. With each exhale, you surrender that breath, the breath that you just took in, you send it out across the world to all those that need to be in contact with God as events take place, as challenges arise, as the pandemic continues. We listen to the silence. Here now is the fire starter that I've prepared for families with children for this Psalm 53. It's entitled, Withering Fools. Read this psalm with Herod in mind, along with the scheming retinue that surrounds and chokes him of life. They are fools that do not know God. The root in Hebrew for fool, nabal, means to fall away or to wither. Just as in Jesus' parable of the sower, when seed falls on rocky ground, the plant withers and falls away because the roots do not go deep. Feel again the contrast between corrupt worldly power, typified by Herod, and the salvation expressed in the final verse that has come in Jesus. Do not play the fool by failing to engraft your spiritual roots onto the vine, which is Christ. You followed Jesus to Bethlehem and adored him there. Now go with him to safety in Egypt and feel an inward serenity until all that is Herod in your life withers away and dies. Here now is Psalm 53. Fools say in their hearts, there is no God. They are corrupt. They commit abominable acts. There is no one who does good. God looks down from heaven on humankind to see if there are any who are wise, who seek after God. They have all fallen away. They are all alike perverse. There is no one who does good. No, not one. Have they no knowledge, those evildoers who eat up my people as they eat bread and do not call upon God? There they shall be in great terror, in terror such as has not been. For God will scatter the bones of the ungodly. They will be put to shame, for God has rejected them. Oh, that deliverance for Israel would come from Zion, when God restores the fortunes of his people. Jacob will rejoice. Israel will be glad. I'd like to share with you something of Dorothy Day. When I was pastor in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, 2 blocks away, or just around the corner, was the Catholic Worker, a group of committed Christians who strove for social justice. And their founder, Dorothy Day, who died a few years before I got there, was alive in her spirit in these wonderful people who would come to a daily celebration of the Eucharist, which I often led and celebrated with. She wrote in a journal these words. She was imprisoned a lot. She was just very, very outspoken for social and racial issues. And she was put in jail oftentimes. And this is what she wrote. All through those weary first days in jail when I was in solitary confinement, the only thoughts that brought comfort to my soul were those lines in the Psalms that express the terror and misery of man suddenly stricken and abandoned. Solitude and hunger and weariness of spirit. These sharpened my perceptions, so that I suffered not only my own sorrow, but the sorrow of those about me. I was no longer myself. I was man. I was no longer a young girl, part of a radical movement seeking justice for those oppressed. I was the oppressed. I was that drug addict, screaming and tossing in her cell, beating her head against the wall. I was that shoplifter who for rebellion was sentenced to solitary. I was that woman who had killed her children, who had murdered her lover. The blackness of hell was all about me. The sorrows of the world encompassed me. I was like one gone down into the pit. Hope had forsaken me. I was the mother whose child had been raped and slain. I was the mother who had borne the monster who had done it. I was even the monster, feeling in my own heart every abomination. So Dorothy, like all of the saints, like Nelson Mandela, like so many that were imprisoned, who are now saints. Incidentally, you're hearing a little sharp sounds of our African gray bird who's just to my right over here. Occasionally he punctuates it with his affirming thing. This is Jesus. The best way that we can experience this psalm is to stand in the gap for those who are foolish, for those who do not acknowledge God or who do not really seek God in the midst of so much turmoil and disruption. So we take the last verse of this psalm as something that we can really hold on to. Oh, that deliverance for Israel would come from Zion, would come from Jerusalem, the New Jerusalem. Would that deliverance would come. And it did come in Christ's death and resurrection. It happened. And when we embody the sufferings of other people and own them as though they are our own, like Dorothy Day did, We are bearing witness to the suffering of Christ, and yet at the same time, we are acknowledging the resurrection. They both go together. They're both sutured together. You can't have one without the other. So whatever you're experiencing in suffering, and we need to be in intercessory prayer for our country and for the world, and for the increased ability to have the vaccines accessible, hopefully to everybody, in the not too distant future. Today is Epiphany, and I'd like to close with the song that we prepared, that Beverly Karlovich and Michael Panella prepared for our Christmas season. It's the final carol, and I'd like to close on this Epiphany Day, this We Three Kings. Now, it was written by John Henry Hopkins, Jr., who was from also Pennsylvania and developed this in 1857 as a song for a children's play, a Christmas play, and it caught on. So here now is We Three Kings. All the verses, and each one is, when it was originally done, there were like 3 voices for each of the 3 kings, the gold, the frankincense, and myrrh. And the final one is, the final verse is the resurrection, the glory. So it's all encapsulated into one. So with this hymn, we close our Christmas season, and we close this meditation, which I pray has been helpful for you as we experience and embody the suffering of the world, as well as the resurrection of the world.
Let's Alleluia.